Well, hello and welcome. Thanks for joining this week's panel conversation. I'm glad you're able to join us to hear the perspective of some law enforcement leaders in the country about things that they're dealing with around their community and how they're incorporating resident engagement into the activities that go on in their communities and in their departments. My name is Matt Fulton, and I'm the vice president for a company called Polco. It's an engagement platform that helps communities build stronger engagement and help with performance-related issues as you're trying to meet strategic goals and move your community forward. Today, we have an excellent panel with two leaders in local law enforcement, and they're going to share their perspectives on putting police needs into a community context. We're going to be talking about the challenges that they face in the work that they do in their communities and just making sure that resident input is being considered in the activities that they are doing, as well as how do you go about managing those expectations and the priorities that are placed on law enforcement agencies in the challenging times that we all kind of find ourselves in. Here's the format of the meeting today, or the discussion today. I'll do a quick introduction of the panel and allow them the chance to introduce themselves a little bit more. And then I'll queue up a topic that will lead into the questions that we'll be asking the panel. Generally, these discussions take about an hour long, but I'm excited about hearing their perspectives and their solutions and the way that they're approaching this topic in their communities. So if that makes sense, let's just kind of jump into our introductions. Our first panelist is Derek Asdot, who's the chief of police in Green Cove Springs, Florida. Chief Azdot has been with the department since 2002 and chief since 2017. He's also an Army veteran, which I always like to hear. Derek has served in numerous leadership roles within the profession. He's the current president of the Northeast Florida Law Enforcement Executives Association. And he's as well as a recognized leader in the profession, having been selected as Narcotics Officer of the Year by the Florida Narcotics Officers Association, as well as the Police Officer of the Year by the Green Cove Springs Police Department. Chief, thank you so much for joining us. And I would love it if you would just add on to that short little background on you.
Thank you for having me. Been very fortunate. I have a great department here. I was fortunate enough to hold every position within the department, which I think moving through to the chief's position really, helps you have a better perspective on, the needs, wants, and, the rollout on what we do day to day in our operations. Would like to say that, Florida's a great place to police. I see some of the things that are happening, some of the civil unrest, and don't get me wrong, we have some of it here. It's not as widespread as you've seen in some other places. I'm interested to see the perspectives from the other chiefs and see, kind of what they do, how they tackle some solutions, and, maybe get some tools from my toolbox. That's
great. And from our conversation just before the panel discussion got going, it sounds like the community is just a wonderful community to visit and to hang out in. So I'm really glad that you're part of the conversation today. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm happy to introduce our second panelist. Jim Heaslip is the chief of police in Marine City, Michigan. Jim started his career as a full-time Marine City police officer back in 2000 and served in numerous roles in the department over his career. He's been awarded the Medal of Valor, Life-Saving Medal of Professional Excellence, and Non-Police Citation, Police Officer of the Year, Chief's Recognition Award, and 2 unit citations. He's a current member of the Michigan Association's Chiefs of Police Association and serves as vice president of the St. Clair County Criminal Justice Association. One of the things I really enjoy, Chief, too, and I always enjoy it when you hear about how you've contributed back to the community, is your role as the defensive football coach for the Marine City High School football team, and now your new role in working with the baseball team. So congratulations on that. Great commitment to the community. Would you mind just sharing a little bit more about yourself, Jim?
Yeah, I was born and raised in this community, and that's what, I'm so passionate about what I do for the citizens, my stakeholders, because, coming from the small town, I'm committed to what I do, and I want to make sure that I'm providing the service that fits their needs. And, I was excited to join this program and get, some perspectives on what Green Cove does and maybe implement something here, like the chief said. I take a philosophy of coaching. I've got a sports background. I played college football for LB in college, took a couple of years, got police academy certified, etc. And, 2009, I started to coach. And I take that coaching philosophy to my guys. You make sure that you've got the right guys in the right positions to get the right job done that meets those expectations, you know, of your citizens.
That's great, Chief. How's your teams doing?
Football team, we're pretty successful. You know, couple state championships this year. We got washed out in the regional finals against a bigger team to our North Frankenmuth. And you know, baseball, I very rarely played baseball. Is one of those things where the head coach comes up to me because my son plays on the team, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, you busy the next couple of weeks?" And I said, no, coach, why? And he goes, "Well, I need a first base coach." And I'm like, "You understand my level of baseball education ended at 12U Little League. Are you sure you want me to help you?" He goes, "All you got to do is say go and back. That's it. I can handle everything else." So that's how I got stuck doing that job.
Oh, that's great. Well, thanks to both of you for taking a little bit of time out of your day and sharing it with us. So the topic today is putting police needs and expectations into a community context. You know, I was a city manager for 32 years. And throughout my career, I increasingly appreciated the role that public safety played, not only from a safety standpoint, but just in kind of creating of a community. The vibrancy of a community and people's desire to be investing in the community is really predicated on how safe they feel and the quality of life that they get. And the role that police departments play and leadership like yourselves play in helping to create that community environment is such a critical part. You know, expectations are so high in local government right now. And in so many cases, public safety is taken for granted because your departments are professionally run and we give people the privilege of really not paying attention. The thing that people don't appreciate is that when issues do happen, the expectations that are placed on you as a department and as individuals are just extremely high. And if you make a mistake, those kinds of things can have generational impacts on a community. And so you're always consistently having to adapt to the changing community dynamics and organizational demands. And then you lay on top of that kind of the challenges that have happened both from a pandemic standpoint and all the civil unrest issues that have come up in the past year or so. It really places just an extraordinary amount of challenge and responsibility on your shoulders. And so it's really a critical thing to be talking about. How do you do it? You know, we have a benchmark community survey that we have implemented in communities called the National Police Services Survey. And it's really designed to help communities get an overall perspective of where their community sentiment is around police departments. And we did two administrations of this survey in 2018 and 2020. And one of the things that we discovered was, based on the things that have happened over the last couple of years, there's been a significant shift in police trust and accountability and things that are impacting law enforcement across the country. The two areas, though, that actually increased in terms of overall priority were areas that involved creating partnerships with the community and doing more community-based problem solving. And it's really an interesting study, but it ties directly into the conversations that we're having today about how do you understand what resident needs are and how do you go about managing and incorporating them into the work that you do. And so it's really timely that we're having this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspectives on how you are dealing with resident input and putting it into a community context. So there's three questions that we're going to be asking each of you today. What role should the community play in guiding or influencing the delivery of police services? What strategies are you using for managing expectations and priorities? And then what tools and methods are you using to understand what those expectations and priorities are in the work that you're doing? And so with that, let's just kind of kick right into the questions. And Chief Azdot, I think I'll start with you for the start. Can you talk a little bit about what role the community should play in guiding or influencing the delivery of police services in Green Cove Spring?
Absolutely. I think they play an enormous role, more so than the organization ad hoc. I think what we're looking at, this happens a lot in law enforcement agencies, I think, that you see where people impart authoritative expertise based on their position instead of leadership, which can create a disconnect with communities. I think what happens is they decide, this is the way we've always done it in law enforcement. This is the way that I've seen it done over my years. And so therefore, this is how we're going to execute this, when what really needs to be happening is kind of the leadership by walking around They need to get out there and spend time with the community and see what their wants and needs are and what their expectations are. They may not always match up with what's possible, but at least you can have that conversation so that they know that they're heard. And it takes a lot of energy. That's something that we've really done here. When I first started this department, we didn't have a very good relationship with the community. I'm just going to be totally honest with you. We didn't. We had an open air drug market. We had violent crimes were rampant. Property crimes were high. And, we turned it around. We decided to go out there and kind of humanize the badge a little bit, let them know who we are and make ourselves accessible, listen to what they have to say, kind of have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them proportionately, and to go out there and to be available to them. I think by doing that, you can build that trust. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it definitely can happen. And I think that, they know what they want. There's a culture. We talk about cultures in police departments all the time. And as chiefs of police, I'm sure, Jim will say the same thing. Our mission is to guide that culture and to figure out who we are as a department and what we do internally, therefore leads to what we do externally. You fight like you train, just like in the military. And so if you treat people with respect all the time and that you go out there and you understand, you can have these hazards. Like for us, we had a big open air drug market. Narcotics dealers, they know what the hazards are when they're dealing dope. It's an occupational hazard to get caught by the police. You can take their freedom, but don't take their dignity. So go out there and be positive, have that message. You can do these things and have long-term protracted investigations without taking their dignity and then understanding what the community wants and needs are. I think you do that by listening and making yourself accessible.
Chief, did you notice over the last year or so any shifts or changes in the level of involvement or engagement from your community residents?
We did and didn't. I mean, obviously COVID had a huge impact on our ability to meet face-to-face. But what we did do is we really kicked up our social media game and tried to make sure that we had that platform, that transparency, and then everything else that we could do to make sure the message gets out there and gets received. I would say, and obviously, our city is a microcosm of what's going on in other places in the U.S., but for us, we didn't see much of a shift. We have a very good relationship with our community, and I will just say we have an enormous, amount of people here who are just socially responsible, that really want quality of life, and really that's our job to deliver that. Our job is to make sure that people feel safe in their homes. They feel visitors and residents alike feel safe in their community. And I think you can achieve that through transparency, accessibility, and really just kind of humanizing the badge. Let them know we put our pants on like they do. It's not us versus them mentality.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Chief Heaslip, can you talk about what role the community plays in guiding police services in your community?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kind of echo what the other chief just said. It's a major role. And it all breaks down with communication. I've gone on some platforms and I preach open door. Come and see me. I have fresh coffee on. You want to have a cup of coffee with me and tell me what's going on in the community. I get that. The benefit about me, like I said prior to, is I'm born and raised in this town. I live in this town. We're 2.2 square miles, population just over 4,000. I know everybody. I come from this area. I know everybody. And, when I walk around, I shop in town, people always come up to me, whether I'm working or I'm off duty, and they're expressing their concerns, the positivity. I was getting a text message last night coaching a baseball game. One guy was having a problem with some mental walking down the road. He is texting me, what should I do about this? And I'm like, hey, just call 911. He then in turn, after the interaction with my officer, he sends me a text message that says, hey, your officer did a fantastic job. I applaud his efforts. So then in turn, I go to my guy this morning and, hey, great job. I wasn't there. So, I'm honored and humbled to be in this position, but it all starts with communication. I've got the motto is how do we know what to fix if we don't know what's broken? If something is broken, if one of my guys treats somebody poorly, if I don't ever know about it, how am I ever supposed to fix that problem? And so that's why I preach communicate. I've got an email, I've got a phone. I'm walking around pretty much almost 7 days a week through the community, one way or another, whether I'm working or I'm off duty, and tell me, I want my guys to maintain that professional standard that you're going to treat everybody with respect, like the other chief said, no matter who you are. If you're a business owner, or if you're the drug dealer, or if we're arresting you for a domestic violence type situation, we're going to treat you with that dignity and respect that you deserve. So it's a major role. And again, I need to know what to fix if something's broken.
Jim, can you talk a little bit about, you do have a kind of a unique perspective because you're a resident of the community, longtime resident of the community. Yeah. And it allows you to be a resident sometimes before you're even the chief. And that kind of humanistic citizen-based connection that you have as a leader in the community. As you kind of think about other communities that they are challenged by that same exact issue about whether or not you're really engaged and immersed into the community or not. What value does that connection for you have in your community?
It's a huge value. There's been people that actually have knocked on my door, my neighbors and stuff. They're in the middle of issues, and people come to my house all the time, whether to drop off like a pistol purchase permit or just advice on what's going on down the street. I open myself up to that because it's about giving back to the citizens. Sometimes, you might get a little irritated that, hey, I'm on my own time here. I'm with my family, my wife, my 2 kids, my dog. But, I'll take time out of my day to tend to these people. So it's a great benefit.
Yeah, I can imagine. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing that perspective.
No problem.
Let's kind of continue with you on the second question, Chief. Chief Heaslip, can you talk about the strategies that you're currently using for managing community expectations?
Yeah, we're not as active in social media as I'd like to be. We're a smaller agency. I've got one guy working. I got a full-time office manager, but he's busy doing a lot of things. He runs the social media. We're active on Facebook, but that's one thing that we need to be more active in. Technology nowadays, there's not anybody that doesn't have a phone. Everybody's attached to that social media platform, and maybe the other chief's got some tips for me on how I can get there. I was researching his website beforehand. I saw his nice YouTube video that he's got on his website, so I'm impressed with that. But in the past, pre-COVID, we've held town hall meetings, and we've opened it up to the public to question and answer type basis. I want to be transparent with the people. If they have questions about why we do certain things, obviously, we can release certain things, but if it comes to procedure stuff, we hold off on that. But I like to engage in communication stuff when it comes to that. We've held coffee with a cop. We sent up tents during our festivals, parade details. I'm always there walking around, interacting with the public and stuff. So I think that goes back to your question, how we're managing it. Soon in the near future, I'm going to implement like a satisfaction survey. If you've dealt with us, here's your complaint number on such and such a date. You've had interaction with our police officers, and give them a list of questions for them to answer, and they can send it back to us. Again, it goes back to what I originally said is if something's broken and needs fixing, I need to know about it.
Yeah. If you were going to recommend, when you have a tough message to deliver to the community, what would you recommend to be your most successful approach to take in delivering that message?
I found, because we've had a lot of school incidents where, threats have come in and the school district wants to handle it one way. We want to handle it one way. We kind of meet in the middle. And I always put a press release out. You put a press release out, you post it to your social media, then it gets to our local newspaper, then they call with questions. So the easiest thing for me to do is flat and right to the point, put it out, press release, and then if anybody's got questions, they can contact me.
Okay, great. Chief Azdot, can you talk about the strategies that you're using in your community for managing community expectations?
Absolutely. We have a couple mechanisms in place that are very beneficial. I will tell you, we did the customer service kind of survey before, and they were overwhelmingly positive. It's a great tool to figure out what you're doing. You'd be amazed at how many different cases you go on relating from DVs through, drug arrests, and people are overwhelmingly supportive of the professionalism of the officers that were on scene. It's really, pretty satisfying to see that. But one of the things we utilize is a citizen advisory council. So the citizen advisory council is a cross section of people within the community. They're volunteers. They come in and they have not only in law enforcement, but have different areas of the city that they're interested in. It could be because we have our own electrical company or electric, could be the water company, law enforcement side, planning and zoning. And what they do is they impart, their perspective on what they see, the jobs that we're doing. One of the things I like to do are neighborhood watch meetings. I know what our department does well. I want to hear what we don't do well. It's one of those things. If you only do what you're good at, you're only ever be good at one thing. So we want to get out there and make ourselves a little bit uncomfortable. Hey, what can we do better? Where are we failing? What areas can we polish ourselves up in? And I think through the interactions we have on social media, we have a very strong social media presence. couple that with the Citizens Advisory Council and the in-person meetings, I think we have a pretty good level of communication here. Now, I will say, I think our communities differ a little bit on the communication side because we have these things here called hurricanes that come all the time. So we have a very strong social media following because that's where our pushes come from for evacuation zones, for everything else. So it is a little bit different, I think, as far as, what you're saying about your social media. I think that people here are a little more ingratiated to it because they want to know the evacuation zones because they live on the river and we have those issues. So I think the expediency of the message is a little more important. So I think that gives us an unfair advantage from that situation compared to your community. But I think that, and the biggest thing I tell the guys here is be lifelong learners. Don't compartmentalize yourself and think one shoe fits everybody. Look at the community, get the temperature of the room, figure out, who they are, what they want, and what we can accomplish. If you do that and you do it with the ideal that you're going to be as transparent as possible and make sure that you can try to make quality of life as the best that it possibly can be, I think you ingratiate yourself to the community. I think they understand that you're truly there for them, that it's not a, hey, this is the way I want to see it done, and we're just going to do it that way. And when they become stakeholders in the community, I think it goes a long way.
Is your Citizen Advisory Council, is that new?
It is. So our new city manager, or I should say new, he's been here several years now, but he's my third. So he is absolutely incredible. He had this idea. He brought it with him from his previous city where he was city manager, and it is hugely beneficial. I mean, so the people that we come in contact with at the neighborhood watch meetings and everything else is not necessarily the same people that are on the advisory committee. So we have different perspectives from different cross sections of the community, and we take in all that information we can and try to act on it as diligently as possible.
Yeah, and what are the kinds of activities that the advisory council is dealing with, and how do you benefit from their involvement?
So we hear a lot of things in our city right now. Like I say, we used to have a narcotics issue, and I'm not naive. It's not gone by any means, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. So now we hear more things like, oh, well, there's a lot of speeding in our neighborhood. There's a lot of vehicles coming by with the loud mufflers at all hours of the night, and so things like that. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's a good situation to be in if that's what we're getting complaints on. And so, property crimes are down, burglaries, robberies, all the violent crimes. So those are the ones I'd rather hear about that we can address. And, obviously there's a lot of ways. I don't want to get into all of them, Kansas City study, all these other things, or, saturation of officers displaces crime and so on and so forth. What we're trying to do is basically just be as transparent as possible and as open and accessible as possible. Like we've recently gone to, it sounds crazy, and you may do it, Jim. Do you drive with your patrol lights on in your vehicles? Not your flashers, obviously, but just your takedowns or anything?
No.
We started doing that for visibility purposes. So we have Highway 17, US 17 that comes through our city, which is a huge thoroughfare. So they drive around with their patrol lights on, and it increases visibility. And you'd be amazed how many people have approached the officers, because whereas before they kind of blended into the landscape, now they don't, they jump out. And so it's really increased our citizen contact, which thus has increased our information flow upstream and has helped us solve some other issues. It is an easy fix. I mean, it's out there. It's pretty awesome. So I don't know if you're interested in that, but I could definitely send you some information, kind of what we're doing on the side when we get through with the interview.
Perfect.
That's great. Thanks for sharing it. Those are exactly the kind of creative ideas that we tried to draw out from these conversations. So thanks for sharing that.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to stay with you for the third question. Chief Azdot, can you talk about the tools and methods that you're using to understand resident expectations and priorities regarding the services that you provide in the community?
So when I was talking about the neighborhood meetings, I go a little more in depth in that. What we do is we take our different sergeants who are responsible for different areas of the city. And so they actually lead the committee in those areas. So they're present with their squads, and we rotate them through. We can't do them. Obviously, you can't do them all the time. So I have a job to do. We're always all limited on people and resources. So what we do is we break them up 1 month at a time, and we go to different areas of the city, and we try to go to their neighborhoods. What we wanted to avoid was having just a town hall meeting where everybody in the city comes in, we're overloaded information. I want to know specifically in your neighborhood, what are your concerns? What can we do well in your neighborhood to make your quality of life better? And so with the sergeants being the lead in those areas, they're therefore responsible for the tasks that are come out of the meetings. So them and their squads have the ability to go in there and meet with these people at a very one-on-one level and to work together to fix these problems. And I think what that's done is created a lot of trust. It's spread it out so that other people now have stake in their stockholders in the community. And with these persons, we're not only forming new relationships, but we're fostering other ones as well. I think one thing law enforcement as a whole, and I don't like to paint with broad brushes, because that's what you see going on right now, where one bad police officer paints everybody. I don't believe in that. But I think what's happening is, people are putting us in that basket. And I think if we do that, we break that down and let them see, hey, we're people just like you. We're brothers and sisters and moms and dads. And we really want to solve these problems. And I think by putting in that one-on-one level where we have these, a sergeant and a squad showing up to deal with these issues and hear these issues and then create solutions to them, it's hugely beneficial.
Is your neighborhood work, is your meeting at the neighborhood level, do you have formal meetings, or is it more of a casual as needed kind of a basis, or is there any suggested strategy that you would make to anybody?
So we've done a couple ways. We have, so one particular neighborhood is really close to one of our community centers. So we hold them there at the community center. Another one is really close to City Hall. So we'll hold it there. But a lot of them we hold at people's houses. They will host them. They'll say, hey, we'll have it in my yard. We'll have it over at the park. We'll do it, so-and-so's house in the garage. And so we try to do that to, show that we're willing to meet you wherever you want, make sure that you're comfortable. Sometimes it's intimidating if you ask people to come to a city structure and say, hey, can you come to City Hall? Can you come to the police department and have these meetings? But if you can come to them, they're dealing with their children, have lives to conduct, and they don't really have the time to break out to come to us. We will come to them. And so we want to see, what issues they have. And more importantly, we want to solve those issues. We all live in, like us, a lot of our officers live in the city. I live in the city. And we want to see this, the city be the best city it can be. And, we do that by listening, observing, and forming solutions.
My experience was also, congratulations on that approach, because I really applaud you for connecting at a neighborhood level in their garages. My experience, and tell me if this has been your experience, is that so many times when you hear things going on, it has nothing to do with law enforcement. It has things to do with just everything going on in the community. Can you tell me what the development is down the street? Is that true for you? And do you integrate any of the other leadership in the community in those meetings at all?
We absolutely do. So one of the things we do when they go out there is we have the sergeants. They're very involved in our planning and zoning, our SDRT boards, and so on and so forth. Like for us in our city, we're on the cusp of a huge growth. We have about 3,000 plus homes coming in the next couple of years into the city limits. So it's a lot to take in. And we're already a decent sized city now. So with that growth curve coming, there's a lot of things that we have to mitigate. And just as you had said, a lot of people, hey, what's going here? What's that? What's the projected growth of the city? Are we going to lose our hometown feel? Like one of the things I preach is the hometown feel is attitude, has nothing to do with size. And so, if you decide that you want to treat people civilly and you want to hold doors open for people and you want to say hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, that's a culture thing. And that's one thing we sell here. We sell culture. In Green Cove, they call it the Cove life. You see the stickers everywhere and people actually, adhere to that. It's pretty awesome place to be.
That's great. People always want to be on a winning team.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
It creates a positive buzz in the community. Speaking of winning teams, let's go over to you, Chief Heaslip. Can you talk about the tools and methods that you are using in your community for understanding where resident needs and expectations are?
Yeah, several years ago, our emergency management center, they provided actually training to implement those neighborhood watch programs. And unfortunately, nobody in our community was interested in kind of grasping onto that concept and moving forward with it. So it kind of died just as quick as it started. But it was something, it was an avenue I was willing to go down and grasp a hold of. But when you've got no participants, it's tough to continue. So, I preach to my guys, we've come a long way in the city where, our downtown business right now is booming along the St. Clair River. We've got a lot of new businesses down there, pedestrian traffic. We've actually become a tourist destination, in the state. And so I preach to my guys, hey, park your patrol car on one end and walk up and down and talk to the business owners and talk to the people and get their needs. And, so between that and, I preach to my guys, hey, let's go over to the school and walk through a basketball game or a tennis match that's going on or a soccer game and talk to the people that are coming to our community, the visitors as well, because sometimes, when the citizens get ingrained with some reputations that have happened in the past, they're not willing to let go. So you sometimes reach out to the new people that have come in and what are their expectations? What do they see type of perspective? So I preach a community oriented policing, where get out of your car and walk around and wave at anybody, say hi to everybody and talk to people. I don't have any formal programs. like I said, I wanted to start them, but with no takers on it, it's tough to do. We open up our building to, the local Boy Scouts, and they come in and do tours, and we participate in like Shop with a Cop, and guys donate their own money to like a Christmas raffle type of thing, where, you talk to these kids that are from the high school, you talk to their parents, and the biggest thing that I find is, my guys can go out on the street and talk to all these people, but where I get a lot of my information is from the kids that I coach. Being a coach on the football team, and being now a coach on the baseball team, I have relationship with these kids that are beyond anything I could even describe. Quick story. 2015, we had an armed robbery. Yeah, it's small town, doesn't ever happen. But our victim of our local convenience store, he's in my office being interviewed, and he's calling me coach, not chief, not officer, he's calling me, hey, coach, this is what happened, man. The gun was in my face, coach. And I'm like, scary situation for this kid, and he's remembering me as a coach and not a chief. So that's what I'm trying to get the rest of my guys to do, to allow our citizens to see that, hey, we're human. And like Derek said, we put our pants on one leg at a time as well. We're the same. Humanize the badge a little bit, So nothing formal, but I'm always trying. But as of now, I got nothing.
Yeah, I love that's a great definition of how you build a culture in a community. But when somebody calls you coach, naturally.
Yeah. And to go on with it, a lot of the conversations that I have with some business people or the town folk, they come up and say, hey, why did we lose the football game last night? What happened? Why are we running it on 3rd and long type of questions, nothing to do with the police department, but they know who I am. They know what role I play in the police department.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
But they're asking me about what happened at the football game last night. So I love it. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
That is great. Say, does your community have, do you have a strategic plan that is followed, is in place for kind of guiding the direction of the community? Or do you have a comparable citizen advisory committee that is used to help just kind of review and guide and give advice to the department?
We don't have anything like the Citizen Advisory Council. The city itself has a strategic plan on how the city's moving forward. Just recently, I just talked to the city manager. We have plans to put up like a Sally Port type on our police department. We're it's a small building right now. Our patrol cars are exposed to the elements of the weather, and everybody that lives in Michigan or Minnesota know what kind of elements we get up here in the cold weather. So, sorry, chief, but we don't have 90-degree weather every day. So we have a strategic plan, but we have nothing formal set in place.
Yeah. Well, you're so embedded in the community, as are probably a lot of the community leadership, that you've got a great sense for what are the major issues that are impacting the community and the direction that those residents want to go. So I totally appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, these kind of conversations have been great, and the perspectives that you shared have just been wonderful. Do you guys have any questions for each other at all on anything that was talked about?
I do want to get Derek's email and phone number.
Yes, sir.
I am interested in getting that satisfaction survey. And for the most part, I'm hearing all positive. I very rarely hear anything negative, and I kind of want to provide all this documentation to my city council and my city commission to prove that to them. Just in case if there's any doubt, here I've got the documentation to prove otherwise. And again, it goes back to what I first said, is if something is broke within the department, I'm hoping somebody will at least document that so I can help fix it to make everybody, to make this a better department for the people of the town. So I will reach out to you for that.
Yes, sir. I'm glad you said that, because that's something that we look at, especially with city councils. We do the job. I mean, law enforcement agencies go out there and do the job, but what we're not good at doing is talking about ourselves and telling them what we do, how the services we're delivering, how we're delivering them, the effectiveness of the delivery of the services. We always hang our hats on UCR stats, which don't always tell the whole story.
Right.
And, to your point, I think that's something very important. One of the things I did early on when I became the interim chief, or I was even in the position, is to do these monthly reports and really tell them, the mayor council, hey, this is what we had, and talk about those cases, the life-saving award cases, the citizen contacts with them, changing tires, helping get people into homes that are locked out. And so on and so forth. It's the little things we do day in and day out that we in law enforcement, we're not very good at bragging on ourselves and talking about ourselves.
Right.
And we need to do that, because otherwise, if we don't, the narrative is controlled by whoever has the largest microphone. And so you have people go out there and spread these things about us and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, a lot of people believe those. They don't really look at the environment around them and judge based on what they see. It's based on what they hear all the time. And if you repeat the message enough, it's believable.
Right.
So I think that's something we need to take control of and kind of, create the narrative and put it out there.
If I can just share my perspective as well, because I think you both are hitting on what I think is one of the most critical things that are impacting law enforcement right now. Law enforcement and communities are just getting deluged by community noise generated by minority voices, and you're not really getting a good understanding as to what is the true reflection of what residents think about their departments and how safe they are and the services that they're getting. And so I'm a firm believer that you need to understand where people's values are and where their perspective is on where the community direction is going. Is it going in a positive way, or in every aspect, law enforcement as well as park and rec, and in every aspect of a community? But unless you have a good understanding of where those values are, you have a really difficult time on thinking long-term about where you take your community. And if you're allowed to just be consumed by the noise that is overwhelming communities right now, particularly in the law enforcement world, you really can get lost in the chatter. And in terms of giving comfort and helping to ensure that your residents feel safe, you need to be able to have that kind of data to be able to really dictate, well, not dictate, but to illustrate where residents are relating to their community and the investments that they've made. And so the community survey work, I think, is a critical aspect of getting that input and helping to kind of guide your alignment of resources and just the direction that the community takes. I think that you're both hitting on exactly the right things, that it's a value, communities are driven by value-based residents and investors and stakeholders. And unless you have a good sense, particularly now when everything is upside down in the world, you really have a hard time knowing the best way and the most efficient way to an effective way to respond to community needs. I mean, does that resonate with either of you?
Yeah, it does with me. Back years and years and years ago, the reputation of our department was just not good. The internal fighting that was going on, the alleged corruption that was going on, the alleged drug selling and using of members of the department. So the reputation here was not good. And so, when I start on kind of the latter end of that here in Marine City in 2000, and to see back then to what we are now, I mean, it's night and day. And in 2008, when the chief before me was here, good friend of mine, great mentor, he literally almost flipped this department upside down and got us moving in the right direction. He got us the policies and procedures in place. He got the right people, again, in the right positions to do the right job, and took us to a different level. And we're not perfect. There's not a cop that I know that's perfect, but every day I tell my guys, well, maybe today we can take one step closer to becoming perfect. We're going to make mistakes. We need to learn from those mistakes and move on. I just don't want to live in the day of the past where our reputation here was just atrocious. And unfortunately, there are still people that are embedded in this community that still think that our police department is run the same way. And until we can get them over that hump, we'll take that next step forward to becoming perfect. And maybe a start here is to start distributing these customer satisfaction surveys to these people and say, hey, what do you think of us and why do you think that way? Will we get honest answers? I don't know, but I have to try.
Yep. Derek, anything to add?
No, I just echo what Jim said. He hit the nail on the head. I think one thing that I see a lot of, which is, I don't know any other word to use besides disgusting, is the painting with the broad brush approach. You take one person that's a police officer that acts inappropriately, and all of a sudden we're all thrown in the same barrel, and we all need reform. We all need it's reckless, it's divisive, and it's just, there's so many issues with that. I mean, if we were to apply that same standard and say every person who's been to prison, well, they've been to prison, they're judged by a jury of their peers, they're obviously not salvageable. That's not realistic, so why are they applying it to us? Nobody hates a bad cop worse than a good cop, and that's just the way it is. If people think that we don't see some of the things that law enforcement officers done throughout the country, we're not absolutely sickened by it. They haven't taken time to get out, to know us, to meet us, and see how we think and how we tick. I think that, I would like to see more people make independent, decisions instead of listening to kind of a national narrative, I'll call it, because it's not that way. Like for us, we have cakes, cookies, fruit baskets, all kinds of things delivered here weekly. And we have a very good relationship with our community. It's because we're people. We go out there and we treat people the right way. It's really so simple. Treat people the way you wish to be treated. It's simply the golden rule. It works. It absolutely works. And I will say, I don't believe that communities feel that way. I think that by and large, law enforcement is supported in the United States. Like, as you had said earlier, Matt, it's a minority amount of people that want to push this narrative. And unfortunately, squeaky wheel gets the grease. So, hate sells and it creates clickbait. So people put it out there.
Let me just share my screen. I think you guys both have hit on just really important things that impact your community, and the work that you're doing on integrating yourselves and your departments into the community on a personal level just makes a huge amount of difference in building that culture that you're talking about. And engagement, those personal engagement opportunities are always the best way to connect with your community, but you need to have that objective data to support the story that your department creates and that your community creates. And that's the value of doing things like a community survey, so that now you've got a record. And the value of those kind of community surveys is if you kind of do it over time, so that you can demonstrate the progress that you're making in the community. And of course, the value of that is getting to the second point, which is being able to create trust and build that accountability in the department, so that people can have greater faith and confidence in their local leadership and the people who are making decisions on their behalf. None of it works though unless you can engage with people and really get a good understanding as to where their heads are and where their sentiments and priorities are. And based on the work and the conversation and the things that you shared today, it sounds like both of you are doing just great work in your community. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Let me just kind of wrap this up. I will get you information, contact information for each of you. I'd love to follow up with you and just kind of get a debrief and some feedback on how the session went and anything that we might be able to do to make it better. We do these every week, and so your ideas and thoughts and suggestions on how we can make and improve these panel conversations would be really welcome, and I would welcome that. So I'll catch up with you later. Following this, you'll get these highlight segments that we'll publish on LinkedIn, and we would just ask you to enjoy them, but also share them with your network, because there's a lot of people that value and trust your opinions. And so we want to make sure that they get the opportunity to hear your perspectives regarding how you're building your community and helping to make your community successful. I just want to thank you guys. It was a great conversation. You shared a lot of great ideas and really appreciate your perspectives. You both are doing what sounds like great work in your communities, and the way that you've integrated yourselves into the community, I think really says a lot for just how you approach your leadership in the department. So congratulations on that. Look forward to just kind of staying in connection with you. Like I told you earlier, one of the greatest things for me is I get to meet great leaders in the country every week, a couple of times a week. And today was no exception. So I really appreciate the time you spent. Unless there's any final comments, I'll just thank you one more time for participating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care.